I'm Brittney Jenkins, and I work as a Customer Experience Manager for RNIB, which stands for Royal National Institute of Blind People. It's quite a mouthful, but basically me and the team that I work with, we are currently trying to improve customer experience across the entire organization. And essentially it's our goal to ensure that the people that we support and also the people who support us know about all of the various ways that they can both get involved in RNIB and support, but also how we can support them in turn. Customer experience is essentially the kind of umbrella term that encapsulates both like user experience, which is more about like a user's kind of web journey, for instance. So like, you know, what does it feel like, and also what is the kind of pathway, you know, that they use to kind of engage with you. So it's more channel based, either a website or potentially like on social media, and then customer service is obviously, you know, an interaction at a specific touch point and how well that interaction goes. So CX is the umbrella that kind of encapsulates both of those things. I think that it helps to kind of give like a wider lens as to why we do the work that we do. So I think making contact with customers and actually, you know, hearing from them, like, this has been my experience and this is the kind of support that I need and that I'm looking for, I think that is really powerful. And I think not only does it help us like improve the experience so they keep coming back to us, which is a benefit to us, but it benefits RNIB as an organization, and it's benefited me because it actually makes me feel like the job that I'm doing is important. RNIB offers support across a whole range of things. So I mean, you know, we basically help people get set up with accessible technology. We provide, you know, kind of immediate like emotional support following diagnosis. We, you know, provide like guidance as, you know, about how to access money and benefits. Provide ways to kind of continue living independently, which is the way we always phrase it, but, you know, through something like our reading services and talking books, which is probably the most beloved kind of RNIB service. And so I think for us, like, we want to make sure that, you know, when people receive like a sight loss diagnosis, that they understand like the range of ways that we can support them, and they know that, you know, the organization is here for them. And that's something that, you know, until very recently wasn't really happening. So we'd have people come in and have amazing experiences with one service, but they would not necessarily be referred on. The work that we're trying to do right now, it is fundamentally changing the way that RNIB works, and the way that we all work together. So as I mentioned, like historically, I'd say that teams have worked quite independently, and the term we always use is silos. So they've worked in silos. Their missions have been quite separate from one another's, but I think to actually have a kind of, you know, an cross-organizational customer experience, then you all have to have new kind of responsibilities and accountabilities for kind of promoting that way of working, and, you know, shared objectives, which is something that we've not necessarily had as an organization, but now we are in the process of implementing those so that every single team at RNIB has a responsibility and kind of metrics and KPIs that are related to improving customer experience. So it's about kind of fundamentally changing like the culture and the work style. I have plenty of things I can share in this regard, as I'm sure that, you know, many charities will have experienced and will be experiencing. So I have three things that I thought about that I think are worth highlighting. So I think the biggest challenge for us as a team so far has been a lack of kind of coordination in terms of the way that RNIB captures data. And I think, you know, having spoken to people from other charities across the UK, this is definitely not an issue that only we've faced, but historically we've had quite a number of CRM systems across the organization, and there hasn't necessarily been like a coordinated process of how to capture customer data either. So what that means is that we have a lot of data, but it's not necessarily in what we refer to as a kind of single customer view. And that has been extremely challenging. I think the second thing I would say is a lack of kind of customer feedback. And what I mean by that, in some parts of the business, I think in the services side, again, the services support people who are blind and partially sighted. We're quite good at asking customers about their experiences and what their experiences of the services that they've used are like, but that data tends to just get recorded and kind of put away somewhere, and it's not really referenced again. And on the supporter side of the business, unfortunately, we just haven't had a lot of kind of consistent feedback loops in place. And thinking back to like the Experience Safari and the Depop talk, and about the idea of making sure that you're basically like reaching out and just hearing from your community as much as you possibly can be. I think that that's something that we're working to implement at RNIB now, but we haven't had that historically. And then the third thing, which again I think will be really relatable for all charities, is we're a very large organization. We've been around for 150 years, and a lot of our kind of processes and like ways of doing things are really calcified. So it's kind of struggling against an internal culture that is not always very open to change, so I think there's sometimes like a lot of resistance, and I think trying to get buy-in from like stakeholders across the entire organization can be very tricky, especially when you're coming to them and basically saying, okay, we need you to have different objectives, we need you to do your day jobs differently than you have before. That can also be a real challenge, and so it's something that we're working through right now. I think, I feel at RNIB still very much in the nascent stages of like really having customer experience totally nailed. And I mean, granted, it's hard to ever really have it totally nailed because it's always evolving and it's always changing. But I think up to this point, one of the things that I am personally most proud of is the kind of implementation of a new kind of annual survey to help us better understand our supporters, because as I mentioned, we do quite a lot of survey work with our service users, but there's been a lot less emphasis on understanding who our supporters are. And the reason that it seems like quite a small thing, but I'm quite proud of it, because I think it's given us like a new kind of perspective, and it's maybe changed the way we've thought about our supporters, and also highlighted like certain areas that we need to learn more about. So for instance, one of the biggest insights that we picked up when we did this last year is that we actually have a significant number of supporters who don't necessarily report a connection to sight loss. And so then obviously that opens up the question, okay, well, interesting, we tend to assume that if you're supporting RNIB, then you either have sight loss yourself or a connection to the cause, but if you don't, then what is the motivation? And that's a really interesting question for us to dig into, and I don't think it's something that we had necessarily been aware of before. So even a change that simple, can really like bring about insights that then kind of open up like more space for you to explore and try to better understand those customers. And so I've been really proud of the fact that we've been able to do that, and now we're looking at how, again, we can kind of implement like more customer feedback opportunities, not just like annually, but you want to be like speaking to people as often as you can. But that's kind of opening the doorway, for us to also think about as well, like what kind of data we want to be capturing when we do have the CRM kind of live across the whole organization. So the 3 tips that I would have for improving customer experience, it's actually probably have more than 3, but I'll stick with 3 for the sake of time. I would say the first one is to make sure that you're asking for customer feedback at every turn, but also not just asking for it, but that you actually have internal processes in place to act on that customer feedback, and ideally as quickly as you possibly can. So something that we very much acknowledge at RNIB is that there is often a gap between the things people say they want and the way that they behave. So you have to account for that. So it doesn't mean that every single piece of feedback you get that you're going to immediately action, but it is really important to have a way of actually acting on what your customers are telling you that they want, and to have a process for determining the best way to do that. So that is the first point. I would say the second point would be to map personas as soon as you possibly can and use that as the basis for understanding your current customer journey. And then the third thing is just ensuring from the very beginning that you have buy-in across the entire organization. I think especially from executive leadership teams. And that's something, you know, we've been working really hard to promote, but it's been quite slow. And it's purely because, again, we are such a huge organization. We're doing so many things, and customer centricity and customer experience means different things to different people. And I think that, you know, that buy-in is so important because you need to have really clear objectives for how you want to improve the customer experience, but also you need to have very clear metrics and KPIs to demonstrate the success that, you know, what success actually looks like for you and for the organization.